There's no place for you here." My daughter yelled, slamming the door in my face. On Christmas Day, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just stood there, snow in my hair, heart in my throat. Then my phone rang. A name I hadn't heard in 40 years lit up the screen. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I'm Frank Miller, 72 years old last September. Retired high school history teacher from Albany. Nothing special about me, really. My wife Linda passed 4 years ago. Cancer took her quick. Since then, it's just been me rattling around in our old 2-bedroom house that suddenly feels too big and too quiet. Sarah is my only child, my pride and joy. I still remember the day she was born, February 12th, 1982. Coldest damn day of the year, but I felt nothing but warmth holding that tiny bundle. Linda and I, we gave everything to that girl, everything, when Linda died. Sarah seemed to change, distant, always busy with her husband Tom and their kids. My grandchildren Emily and Jake, 15 and 12 now, good kids. At least they used to be. "We should get together more often, Dad," Sarah would say on our monthly phone calls. "The kids miss you." But somehow those get-togethers never materialized. Always an excuse. Soccer practice, work events, someone had a cold. So when she called me a week before Christmas, actually inviting me over for the holiday, I nearly fell out of my recliner. "Really? You want me there for Christmas Day?" I asked, not bothering to hide my surprise. "Of course, Dad," she said, her voice warm like it used to be. "It's time we started being a real family again. Mom would have wanted that." That hit me right in the chest. Linda would have wanted that. She always was. The glue that held us together. I spent the next week baking Linda's famous gingerbread cookies from her recipe cards. My hands aren't what they used to be, but I managed. I wrapped presents for the grandkids. Gift cards mostly, since I don't know what teenagers like anymore. For Sarah, I had something special. Linda's pearl necklace. The one she wore on our wedding day. I figured it was time. Christmas morning, I put on my best sweater, dark green with a subtle pattern, the one Linda always said brought out my eyes. I combed what's left of my hair, splashed on some aftershave, and packed everything carefully in the car. The drive to Sarah's suburban home usually takes 40 minutes, but with the snow, it was closer to an hour. I didn't mind. Christmas music on the radio, memories of better days filling my head. I was going to see my family. Really see them. I pulled into a driveway at 11:30, right on time. Their house looked like something from a magazine. Perfect white lights outlining the roof, a tasteful wreath on the door. So different from the chaotic decorations Linda and I used to put up when Sarah was little. My arms were full, the tin of cookies, the bags of presents, as I made my way carefully up the slippery walkway. I rang the doorbell with my elbow and put on my biggest smile. The door opened. It was Tom, my son-in-law. "Tall guy, works in finance or insurance or something. Never quite warmed up to me, Frank," he said flatly. "No Merry Christmas. No offer to help with the packages. Just Frank, Merry Christmas, Tom," I said, trying to keep my spirits up. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Despite the snow?" He nodded and stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled amazing. Roasting turkey, cinnamon, pine from the massive tree in their living room. "Where are the kids?" I asked, setting down my packages on the bench in the foyer, in their rooms. "On their phones, probably," Tom said, checking his watch. "Sarah's in the kitchen." I made my way through their immaculate home, everything in its place. No sign that a family actually lived there, except for the professionally decorated Christmas tree, with a small pile of elegantly wrapped gifts beneath it. Sarah was standing at the kitchen island, chopping vegetables. Her back was to me. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said. She turned, knife in hand, and gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, you're here." Not the welcome I'd hoped for, but I pressed on. "I brought Linda's, your mom's, gingerbread cookies. Made them myself." I placed the tin on the counter. Sarah glanced at it. "Thanks. We're trying to cut back on sugar, but maybe the kids will have some." That stung. Those cookies were a tradition. Sarah used to beg for them every Christmas. "I'll just go say hi to Emily and Jake," I said, retreating from the suddenly chilly kitchen. Upstairs, I found both kids exactly as Tom had described, in their rooms, on their phones. They mumbled, "Hey, Grandpa," without looking up. I stood awkwardly in their doorways, trying to make conversation about school, friends, anything. One-word answers were all I got. These weren't the grandkids who used to climb all over me, begging for piggyback rides and stories. These were strangers, wearing my grandchildren's faces. Dinner was set for 2 p.m. I offered to help, but Sarah said she had it under control. So I sat in their living room, alone, looking at family photos on the walls. Plenty of Sarah, Tom, and the kids. None with me or Linda. It was like we'd been erased. When dinner was finally served, it looked perfect. Too perfect, like a photograph in a cookbook. We sat around the table, and Tom carved the turkey with surgical precision. "So, Dad," Sarah said as she passed the cranberry sauce, "how's the house?" "Same as always," I replied. "Thinking of finally fixing that loose step on the back porch come spring. Maybe it's time to think about selling," she said casually. "It's a lot of house for just one person." I nearly choked on my water. "Sell the house?" "But that's our home, where you grew up. It's just a thought," she said, exchanging a look with Tom. "A lot of people your age are downsizing, moving into communities with people their own age. I'm not ready for a retirement home," I said firmly. "Not a retirement home," Tom interjected. "A 55-plus community, less maintenance, more social opportunities." The conversation moved on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they'd discussed this before. Planned it even. After dinner, we moved to the living room for presents. The kids opened their gift cards from me with about as much enthusiasm as you'd expect. Sarah opened the small box containing her mother's pearls. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw my little girl again. "Mom's pearls," she whispered, running her fingers over them. "She wanted you to have them," I said. "I've been waiting for the right time." Sarah looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time that day. "Thank you, Dad." Then Tom cleared his throat, and the moment was gone. He handed Sarah a small envelope. "Your turn." She opened it and pulled out what looked like a brochure. Her eyes widened. "Really? You did it?" Tom nodded, looking pleased with himself. "All booked. 3 weeks in Europe. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. Just like you wanted, but—" Sarah looked at a calendar on the wall. "This is for February." "What about the kids?" "My parents are going to take them," Tom said smoothly. "It's all arranged." I sat there, confusion washing over me. February was when I was supposed to have my knee surgery. Sarah had promised to help me afterward. She knew I couldn't manage alone. "Sarah," I said quietly, "what about my surgery? You said you'd stay with me for a few days, remember?" The room went silent. Sarah and Tom exchanged another one of those looks. "Dad," she said slowly, "we need to talk about that. We think it would be better if you looked into a short-term care facility for your recovery." My heart sank. "A facility? But you promised—" "Things change, Frank," Tom cut in. "We have lives too, you know. We can't put everything on hold." "I never asked you to put anything on hold," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Just a few days of help after surgery. That's all." "Dad, please don't make this difficult," Sarah sighed. "We've already looked into some places. They're very nice. Insurance should cover most of it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter, planning to ship me off to some facility rather than help me herself. "Linda would never have allowed this. I thought family helped family," I said. "That's what your mother and I taught you." "Mom's not here anymore," Sarah snapped, her composure cracking. "And I can't be her. I can't drop everything because you refuse to acknowledge that you're getting older and need more help than I can give." "I don't need more help," I said, feeling my face flush. "I need my daughter to keep her word." The argument escalated from there. Old grievances surfaced. Apparently, I called too often, asked too many questions, didn't understand their busy lives, was stuck in the past. Tom stood up, arms crossed. "I think it's time you left, Frank." I stared at him in disbelief. "Left? It's Christmas Day. There's a snowstorm out there." "You managed to drive here," he said coldly. "You can manage to drive home." I looked to Sarah, waiting for her to defend me, to remember I was her father. The man who had taught her to ride a bike, helped her with homework, walked her down the aisle. Instead, she stood up too. "Tom's right, Dad. I think you should go." "This isn't working." "Sarah," I pleaded, "it's Christmas." Your mother, stop bringing Mom into this, she shouted. She's gone, and using her to guilt me isn't fair. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's not what I... Just go, Dad, she said, walking to the front door and opening it. Cold air rushed in, along with a few snowflakes. There's no place for you here. Not if you can't accept that things have changed. I stood slowly, my bad knee protesting. Gathered my coat. Didn't bother with the leftover cookies or the wrapping paper from my gifts. What was the point? As I passed Sarah at the door, I paused. Your mother would be ashamed, I said quietly. Her face hardened. Goodbye, Dad. The door closed behind me with a final sounding click. I stood on the porch, snow falling around me, wondering how my life had come to this. 72 years old and thrown out on Christmas Day by my only child. I made it to my car somehow. Sat there with the engine off, tears streaming down my face. This couldn't be happening. Not to us. Not to our family. And then my phone rang. I fished it out of my pocket, hoping against hope it was Sarah, calling to apologize, to ask me to come back inside. The number on the screen wasn't hers. In fact, I didn't recognize it at all. I almost didn't answer. But something, desperation, loneliness, or maybe just the need to hear another human voice, made me press the green button. Hello, I said, my voice rough from crying. Is this Frank Miller? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Frank. Mr. Miller, this is Diane Peterson from Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about Elizabeth Carter. You're listed as her emergency contact. Elizabeth Carter? The name hit me like a thunderbolt. I hadn't heard it in 40 years? More? Mr. Miller, are you there? Yes, I managed. Yes, I'm here. Elizabeth, is she okay? She's been admitted with pneumonia, Mr. Miller. Her condition is serious but stable. She's been asking for you. Elizabeth, my first love. The woman I dated before Linda. The one who got away, or more accurately, the one I let go when my job took me across the country. We'd lost touch decades ago. Mr. Miller, the voice prompted, are you able to come to the hospital? I looked at Sarah's house, with its perfect decorations, and the family that no longer wanted me. Then I looked at the snow-covered road ahead. Yes, I said, starting the car. I'm on my way. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty on Christmas Day. Makes sense. Nobody wants to be there on a holiday. Nobody except people like me with nowhere else to go. The snow was coming down harder now, big fat flakes that melted the second they hit my windshield. I sat there for a minute after parking, trying to wrap my head around it all. 1 minute, I'm getting thrown out of my daughter's house. The next, I'm rushing to see a woman I haven't spoken to in over 40 years. Elizabeth Carter. Just thinking her name brought back a flood of memories. I met her in college, junior year 1973. She was studying English literature, hair always in a messy bun, ink stains on her fingers, smart as a whip and funny too. God, she could make me laugh. We dated for almost 2 years. I thought she might be the one. Then I got offered that teaching position in Albany. She was set on staying in Chicago, working at her father's publishing company. We were young, stubborn. Neither of us would budge. So we said goodbye at a train station, promising to write. We did for a while. Then life happened. I met Linda, Elizabeth. Well, I never knew what happened to Elizabeth until now. The hospital lobby was decked out in half-hearted Christmas decorations, a small artificial tree, some tinsel taped to the reception desk. The woman behind the counter looked tired. I'm here to see Elizabeth Carter, I said, my voice still rough from earlier. I got a call. I'm her emergency contact, apparently. The receptionist tapped at her computer. Room 412, 4th floor. She handed me a visitor sticker. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. What was I doing here? What would I say to her after all these years? And why in the world was I still listed as her emergency contact? Room 412 had the door partially closed. I knocked gently. "Come in," called a nurse from inside. I pushed the door open. The room was dim, just the glow from a small lamp and all those beeping machines. And there in the hospital bed was Elizabeth, I almost didn't recognize her. The Elizabeth in my memories had chestnut hair and bright eyes full of mischief. This woman had silver hair spread out on the pillow, her face lined with age, but when she turned toward me, I saw it, that spark in her eyes, still there after all these years. "Frank," she said, her voice raspy, "you actually came." The nurse checked something on one of the machines. "I'll give you two some privacy," she said, slipping out of the room. I moved closer to the bed, suddenly aware of how awkward this was. "The hospital called me, said I was your emergency contact." Elizabeth smiled weakly. "I never got around to changing it, I guess." "How are you feeling?" I asked, immediately regretting the stupid question. She was in a hospital bed on Christmas Day. Obviously, not great. "I've been better," she replied, then coughed, a deep rattling sound that made me wince. "Pneumonia. Doctor says I'll pull through, but at my age they're being cautious." I nodded, still standing awkwardly at her bedside. "Can I get you anything? Water?" "Sit down, Frank," she said, patting the edge of the bed. "You're hovering like a nervous hummingbird." I sat, careful not to disturb any of the tubes or wires connected to her. Up close, I could see her better. 70 years old, just like me, but still beautiful in a way that made my heart ache. "So," she said after a moment, "why are you alone on Christmas?" I blinked in surprise. "How do you know I'm alone?" She gave me a look, that same look she used to give me in college when she thought I was being particularly dense. "Frank Miller, if you had anywhere else to be, you wouldn't have dropped everything to visit an old girlfriend in the hospital." That made me laugh, despite everything. Fair enough. I hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding it. "My daughter kicked me out, literally told me, 'There's no place for you here.'" Elizabeth's eyes widened. "On Christmas Day? That's harsh." "Yeah," I sighed, suddenly exhausted. "It's been coming for a while, I think, since Linda, my wife, passed away." "I heard about Linda," Elizabeth said softly. "I'm sorry, Frank. I know how much you loved her." "You heard? How?" She smiled a little. "Albany isn't that big, and I moved back about 10 years ago, took over my cousin's bookstore downtown, Carter's Books on Elm Street." I stared at her. "You've been in Albany for 10 years. We've been living in the same town for a decade and never ran into each other." "I saw you once," she admitted. "At the farmer's market. You were with a woman I assumed was your wife. You looked happy. I didn't want to intrude." My mind was reeling. Elizabeth had been so close all this time. That must have been at least 5 years ago. Linda's been gone 4 years now. "I know," she said. "I saw the obituary." We fell silent for a moment, the only sound the steady beep of her heart monitor. "Tell me about your daughter," she finally said. "The one who kicked you out today." So I did. I told her about Sarah, about how close we used to be, about how things changed after Linda died, the way she and Tom seemed to be pushing me toward assisted living or a retirement community, the argument about my knee surgery. "They had the nerve to book a European vacation right when they knew I'd need help," I said, the anger rising again. "Then acted like I was being unreasonable for expecting them to keep their promise." Elizabeth listened. Really listened, in a way no one had in years. When I finished, she reached out and took my hand. Her skin was paper-thin, cool to the touch. "I'm sorry, Frank. Family can hurt us the most because they know exactly where to aim." I squeezed her hand gently. "Enough about my problems. What about you? Did you ever marry? Have kids?" A shadow passed over her face. "I married David Thompson. He was kind, stable, a good man." She paused. "We couldn't have children, not for lack of trying." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "David passed 12 years ago. Heart attack." She gave a small shrug. "That's when I moved back to Albany. Needed a fresh start." We talked for hours after that, about books she'd sold at her store, students I'd taught, places we'd traveled. It was so easy, like picking up a conversation we'd paused just yesterday instead of 4 decades ago. Around 6, the nurse came back in. "Miss Carter needs her rest now, sir." I stood reluctantly. Of course, I should get going anyway. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Elizabeth asked, and for a moment she looked vulnerable, almost shy. "Try and stop me," I replied, and was rewarded with her smile. I drove home through the snow, my mind spinning. The day had been a roller coaster, from hope to heartbreak too. Whatever this was, a second chance? A cruel twist of fate? I wasn't sure. The house was dark and cold when I got home. I turned up the heat and microwaved some leftover lasagna. Not exactly a Christmas feast, but I wasn't feeling very festive anyway. As I ate alone at my kitchen table, I thought about Sarah, about what had gone wrong between us. There had to be more to it than what happened today. People don't just change overnight. On a hunch, I went to my office and booted up my ancient computer. Linda had set up an email account for me years ago. I rarely used it, but Sarah had insisted it was the easiest way to reach her. I had 27 unread emails. Most were advertisements or spam, but 3 were from Sarah, dated over the past few months. I opened the oldest one first. "Dad, I'm forwarding you information about Sunny Pines, the assisted living community Tom and I toured last week. I really think you should consider it. The house is too much for you to manage alone, and they have excellent care for when your knee gets worse. They have an opening coming up in February. Think about it, okay? Sarah, February, the same month as my surgery, the same month they'd now planned their European vacation." I opened the next email. "Dad, I noticed you didn't respond to my email about Sunny Pines. Did you get a chance to look at their brochure? Tom knows the director, and he can put in a good word if you're interested. Also, about Thanksgiving, we're actually going to Tom's parents this year. I meant to tell you on the phone, but forgot. Sorry for the late notice, Sarah, and then the third, sent just a week before Christmas. Dad, I know we haven't connected much lately, but I'd like you to come for Christmas dinner. There's something Tom and I want to discuss with you in person. It's important. See you on the 25th at 11:30. Sarah, I sat back in my chair, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. This hadn't been a spontaneous invitation. They'd planned it. Planned to use Christmas Day to convince me to move into Sunny Pines. And when I resisted, when I reminded Sarah of her promise to help after my surgery, things had exploded. But why? Why were they so determined to get me out of my house? I went to bed troubled, questions swirling in my mind. Sleep didn't come easily. The next morning I woke to my phone ringing. It was Sarah. "Dad," she said, her voice clipped. "We need to talk about yesterday." "Yes, we do," I agreed, sitting up in bed. "That was quite a Christmas. You embarrassed us in front of the kids," she said. Making a scene like that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I embarrassed you? You threw me out of your house on Christmas Day. Because you were being difficult," she snapped. "We're trying to help you, Dad. You're not getting any younger. That house is a money pit, and you can barely take care of yourself." "I take care of myself just fine," I retorted. "And what's your sudden interest in my house anyway?" There was a pause. Too long of a pause. "Sarah," I said slowly, "what's going on with my house?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "I just think it would sell well in this market. Give you a nice nest egg for retirement." Something clicked in my brain. The development. The new condos they're building near the park. "That's about half a mile from my house." Another pause. "What about it? Tom's company is involved, isn't it?" I remember him mentioning something about a big real estate project last summer. "Dad, you're not making any sense," Sarah said, but her voice had changed. Defensive now. "My house would be valuable to developers looking to expand that project, wouldn't it? Old neighborhood, big lots. Prime real estate. This is ridiculous," Sarah said. "I'm hanging up now. Call me when you're thinking clearly." The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, as pieces began falling into place. Tom worked for Meridian Investments. I'd seen their signs all over the new development. And now, suddenly, they were pushing hard for me to sell my house and move into Sunny Pines. Was it possible? Could my own daughter and son-in-law be trying to profit off my home, using my knee surgery as leverage? I needed to know more. But first, I had a hospital visit to make. Elizabeth looked better when I arrived that afternoon. She was sitting up, some color back in her cheeks. "You came back," she said, sounding pleased. "I promised, didn't I?" I set down the bag I'd brought. "I stopped by that little bakery on 4th Street. Brought you some decent food. Hospital stuff is terrible." "My hero," she said, peeking into the bag. "Ooh, cinnamon rolls. My favorite." I remembered, I said, and was rewarded with her smile. As she ate, I told her about the emails I'd found, about my suspicions regarding Tom's company and the development near my house. Elizabeth listened thoughtfully. When I finished, she said, "Have you checked the property records? Or looked into this Meridian Investments?" "Not yet. I'm not even sure how to do that. I have a friend," she said. "Marjorie, retired lawyer. She could help. You'd do that? Get your friend involved in my mess." Elizabeth reached for my hand again. "Frank, when that call came from the hospital, you dropped everything and came. On Christmas Day, let me help you now." I felt something warm bloom in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you," I said softly. "Besides," she added with a glint in her eye, "Marjorie loves nothing more than digging up dirt. She'll be thrilled." Over the next few days, as Elizabeth recovered in the hospital, a pattern emerged. I'd visit her every afternoon, bringing food or books or just my company. We'd talk for hours, about the past, about our lives, about everything and nothing, and with each visit, I felt more alive than I had in years. Meanwhile, Marjorie, a sharp-eyed woman in her 70s with a no-nonsense attitude, was indeed thrilled to help. She knew exactly where to look and what questions to ask. 4 days after Christmas, she met me at the hospital with a thick folder. "You're not going to like what I found," she said without preamble, spreading documents across Elizabeth's tray table. "Your son-in-law isn't just involved with that development. He's the project manager, and they've been buying up properties all around yours, but they haven't approached me directly," I said. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "No. Instead, your daughter suddenly wants you to move to Sunny Pines. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" Elizabeth, now strong enough to sit in a chair beside her bed, leaned forward. "There's more, isn't there, Marge?" Marjorie nodded grimly. "Sunny Pines. Guess who sits on their board of directors? Thomas Reynolds. My son-in-law's name hit me like a physical blow. Tom is on the board of the place they're trying to send me to. It gets worse," Marjorie continued, pulling out another document. "I found this filed with the county 3 months ago. It's a power of attorney form." "For you, Frank?" I stared at the paper. "I never signed this." "Look at the signature," Elizabeth said softly. I did. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. Close, but not quite right. They forged my signature. I couldn't believe it. Wouldn't believe it. My own daughter? Marjorie looked at me with sympathy. "With this, they could sell your house without your consent. Claim you were mentally incompetent. Once you were safely tucked away in Sunny Pines, of course, the room seemed to spin around me. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to steady myself. "I need to confront them," I said finally. "I need to hear them admit it." Elizabeth touched my arm. "Not alone, you don't. We'll go with you." "We." I looked between her and Marjorie. "I'm being discharged tomorrow," Elizabeth said. "Perfect timing for a confrontation, don't you think?" Despite everything, I found myself smiling. These 2 fierce women were ready to fight for me when my own family had betrayed me. "Tomorrow, then," I agreed. "We'll pay Sarah and Tom a visit." As I drove home that evening, a strange calm had settled over me. The pain was still there, the betrayal cut deep. But I wasn't alone anymore, and tomorrow I would face my daughter and demand the truth. I barely slept that night. How could I? My mind kept replaying every conversation with Sarah over the past year, looking for clues I'd missed. The gradual distancing, the sudden interest in my living situation, the convenient excuses to avoid spending time together. It all made a twisted kind of sense now. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with math homework, the woman I'd walked down the aisle, Was she really capable of this level of deception? By morning I was exhausted but resolute. I showered, shaved, and put on my best sweater. Not the Christmas one, but a navy blue one Linda had given me for our last anniversary together. I needed her strength today. I arrived at the hospital just as Elizabeth was finishing her discharge paperwork. She looked like a different person than the frail woman I'd found in that hospital bed 5 days ago. Her silver hair was neatly brushed, and she wore a simple blue dress someone had brought her. Ready for battle? She asked when she saw me, a glint of determination in her eyes. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied. Marjorie met us in the lobby, carrying an intimidating leather briefcase. I made copies of everything, she said without preamble. And I spoke with a detective friend of mine this morning. If things go south, we make one phone call. The drive to Sarah's house was tense. None of us spoke much. Elizabeth sat beside me in the passenger seat, occasionally reaching over to pat my hand when my grip on the steering wheel got too tight. No matter what happens, she said as we pulled onto Sarah's street, remember you're not alone in this. Those words meant more to me than she could know. Sarah's house looked different in daylight without the Christmas decorations. Just another suburban home with a well-manicured lawn and a 2-car garage. Hard to believe it was the site of such betrayal. Their home, I said, noting both cars in the driveway. The kids must be at school. Good, Marjorie said firmly. Better they don't witness this. We walked to the front door together, Elizabeth's arm linked with mine. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Sarah answered, her expression changing from neutral to shocked when she saw who was with me. Dad? What's going on? Who are these people? Hello, Sarah, I said, keeping my voice steady. We need to talk. May we come in? She hesitated, then stepped back reluctantly. Tom's on a work call. He'll be down in a minute. We followed her into the living room, the same room where she'd opened her mother's pearls on Christmas Day before throwing me out. I noticed she wasn't wearing them now. This is Elizabeth Carter, I said, making introductions. And Marjorie Donovan. Sarah nodded stiffly but didn't offer to shake hands. What's this about? It's about Sunny Pines, Marjorie said, opening her briefcase, and Meridian Investments. And a very interesting power of attorney document with your father's forged signature on it. The color drained from Sarah's face. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, I said quietly. I think you and Tom have been planning this for months. Get me into Sunny Pines, sell my house to Meridian for the development project, and pocket a nice commission. Or is Tom getting a bonus for securing that particular property? That's ridiculous, Sarah sputtered, but her eyes darted toward the staircase. Tom, can you come down here? Tom appeared moments later, his business smile fading when he saw us. What's going on? Marjorie didn't waste time. She laid out the documents one by one on the coffee table. Property records showing Meridian's acquisitions around Frank's neighborhood. Your name as project manager. Your position on Sunny Pines board of directors. And this. She placed the forged power of attorney form on top. Care to explain? Tom's face hardened. Who the hell are you? I'm the retired attorney who's about to make your life very difficult unless you start talking, Marjorie replied coolly. The room crackled with tension. I'd looked at Sarah, searching for any sign of the daughter I'd raised. Why? I asked simply. Was my house really worth all this? Something in her cracked then. She sank onto the couch, hands trembling. It wasn't just about the house, she said. It was everything. The timing, the opportunity. Sarah, don't, Tom warned, but she ignored him. After Mom died, you were so lost, she continued. So dependent on me. Calling all the time. Needing help with everything. And then Tom got this promotion. Project manager for the entire River Park development. His big break. And my house was in the way, I said flatly. She nodded miserably. The company had bought most of the surrounding properties, but yours was key, right in the center. They were offering double market value. So instead of just asking me if I'd sell, you decided to declare me incompetent and ship me off to a facility. It wasn't like that, Sarah protested. Sunny Pines is a nice place. You'd have been comfortable there. And the money from the house would have paid for it for years, plus a healthy remainder for you, I imagine, Elizabeth said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was gentle but firm. Tom stepped forward, his businessman facade back in place. Look, things got out of hand. We can fix this. Tear up that power of attorney. Start fresh. Start fresh? I echoed in disbelief. You forged my signature. You were planning to sell my home without my consent. That's elder abuse. It's fraud. It's a felony, Marjorie added helpfully. Several, actually. Tom's facade cracked. You can't prove anything. It's your word against ours. Actually, Marjorie said, pulling out her phone, I took the liberty of recording this conversation. New York is a one-party consent state for recordings. And I have a friend at the DA's office who's very interested in elder fraud cases. The blood drained from Tom's face. You're bluffing. Marjorie just smiled. Try me. Sarah burst into tears. Dad, please. We were just trying to help you. The house is too big. You're all alone there. You thought you could profit from my loneliness. I finished for her. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable. Your mother would be heartbroken. Tom paced the room like a caged animal. What do you want? Money, is that it? I want the truth, I said firmly. All of it. How long has this been going on? Who else is involved? Over the next hour, the whole sordid story came out. The plan had been Tom's initially, a way to solve the problem of the holdout homeowner while also dealing with his dependent father-in-law. Sarah had been reluctant at first, but convinced herself it was for my own good. The forged power of attorney had been their insurance policy, something to fall back on if I refused to move willingly. And Christmas Day, I asked. That was supposed to be when you convinced me to sign the papers. Sarah nodded, unable to meet my eyes. We thought, with the holidays, family time, you'd be more receptive. Instead, I reminded you about your promise to help after my surgery, I said, which conflicted with your European vacation. The trip was a bonus from Meridian, Tom admitted, for securing the final properties for the development. A celebration of your success, Elizabeth said, her voice laced with disgust. While your father-in-law recovered from surgery alone. The confrontation might have continued indefinitely if Marjorie's phone hadn't rung. She answered, spoke briefly, then hung up with a satisfied smile. That was Detective Weber, she said. He's on his way. Seems the DA is very interested in corporate real estate fraud, especially when it involves elder abuse. Tom went pale. You called the police? Before we came, Marjorie confirmed. I believed in being prepared. What followed was something of a blur. Detective Weber arrived with another officer. Statements were taken, documents examined. Tom and Sarah were not arrested on the spot. These things take time, Marjorie explained, but they were informed in no uncertain terms that charges would be filed. You've ruined everything, Sarah said as the police prepared to leave. She wasn't looking at the detective or at Tom. She was looking at me. No, Sarah, I said sadly. You did that yourself. Elizabeth and I waited outside while Marjorie finished up with the detective. The January air was cold, but refreshing after the stifling atmosphere in the house. Are you okay? Elizabeth asked gently. I shook my head. I don't know if I'll ever be okay with this. My own daughter, I know. She took my hand. Family betrayal cuts the deepest. We stood in silence for a moment, watching our breath cloud in the cold air. What happens now? I asked finally. That depends on you, Elizabeth said. The DA will pursue charges. Marjorie will make sure of that. But beyond the legal stuff, what do you want, Frank? It was a good question. What did I want? My old life back. That was impossible. Forgiveness? I wasn't ready for that. Justice? Maybe, but it felt hollow. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. I want to not be alone anymore. Elizabeth squeezed my hand. You're not alone. Marjorie joined us a few minutes later, looking grimly satisfied. The wheels of justice are turning, she announced. Slowly, as always, but turning nonetheless. We drove back to my house that would remain my house. Elizabeth and Marjorie came inside. I made coffee. It felt strangely normal, these two women sitting at my kitchen table, discussing legal strategies and next steps as if we'd known each other for years. In a way, I had known Elizabeth for years. Known her and lost her and somehow found her again when I needed her most. The days that followed took on a rhythm. My knee surgery was scheduled for February 10th. Elizabeth, fully recovered from her pneumonia, insisted on helping me prepare. She and Marjorie became regular visitors to my house, bringing books, groceries, and most importantly, their company. The legal process ground forward. Tom was suspended from his position at Meridian when the investigation became public. Sarah called once, her voice small and broken, asking if I could ever forgive her. I told her I didn't know. It was the honest answer. 2 days before my surgery, Elizabeth came over with dinner, homemade lasagna, my favorite. As we ate at my kitchen table, she seemed nervous, playing with her fork more than eating. "What's on your mind?" I asked finally. She set down her fork and met my eyes. "I've been thinking about your recovery. After the surgery, Marjorie found a good home health aide," I said. "I'll be fine." "I know," Elizabeth nodded. "But I was wondering, would you mind some additional help?" "From me?" I blinked in surprise. "You want to help with my recovery?" "I want more than that, Frank," she said quietly. "I've spent the past 2 weeks remembering why I fell in love with you all those years ago. Your kindness, your integrity, the way you light up when you talk about your old students." She took a deep breath. "I'm not proposing marriage or anything dramatic, but maybe we could see where this goes." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Elizabeth Carter, are you asking me out while I'm about to have knee surgery?" She laughed, the tension breaking. "I guess I am." "Bad timing?" "Perfect timing," I corrected her. And yes to all of it. My surgery went well. Elizabeth was there when I woke up, reading a dog-eared paperback in the chair beside my bed. She moved into my guest room during my recovery, bringing along enough books to start a small library. We fell into an easy routine. Breakfast together, physical therapy exercises, afternoons reading or watching old movies, dinner at the kitchen table. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were bad days when the pain was too much, when I'd snap at her unfairly. Days when the hurt of Sarah's betrayal would overwhelm me again. But Elizabeth weathered it all with patience and understanding. 3 months after Christmas, the DA's office reached a plea deal with Tom. He would serve no jail time, but would pay substantial restitution and perform community service. Sarah was not charged. There wasn't enough evidence of her direct involvement in the fraud, but our relationship remained fractured. We spoke occasionally, awkward conversations full of things unsaid. By summer, Elizabeth had unofficially moved in. Her bookstore was only a 15-minute drive away, and she'd come home every evening, with stories about customers or new arrivals. Home. That's what my house had become again. Not an empty shell echoing with memories, but a home filled with laughter and conversation, and the gentle rustle of turning pages. On warm evenings, we'd sit on the back porch, the one with the step I finally fixed, and watch the sunset. Sometimes we'd talk about the past, about the years we'd missed together. Sometimes we'd talk about the future, tentatively, cautiously. And sometimes we'd just sit in comfortable silence, her hand in mine. I never did sell my house. The development went ahead without my property, building around it instead. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of Tom in the distance, overseeing the construction. He'd been rehired at a lower position after the scandal died down. We never spoke. As for Sarah, we're taking small steps. Coffee once a month. Brief, careful conversations. The trust is gone, maybe forever, but she's still my daughter. Elizabeth encourages me to keep trying, to leave the door open. If not for forgiveness, then for understanding. "Family is complicated," she told me one night as we got ready for bed. "Sometimes the family we choose is as important as the family we're born into." She was right, of course. At 72, I'd found a second chance at love with a woman I'd let go decades ago. I discovered the strength to stand up for myself when my own daughter tried to take advantage of me. I'd built a new kind of family, Elizabeth, Marjorie, even some of the regulars at the bookstore who'd become friends. That Christmas Day when Sarah told me there's no place for you here had felt like an ending. And in some ways it was, but it was also a beginning. A phone call from a hospital. A reunion decades in the making. A chance to rewrite my story. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes betrayal opens the door to blessing. And sometimes, when one door closes with cruel finality, another opens with the gentle ring of a telephone on Christmas Day. If there's anything I've learned from all this, it's that it's never too late. Not for love, not for justice, not for starting over. Even at 72, life can surprise you. You just have to be willing to answer the call when it comes. So if you're reading this, maybe feeling alone or betrayed or like you've run out of chances, don't give up. Your phone might be about to ring too.